Happy Monday evening. All right, I'm Carrie. This is Student Loan Chit-Chat. Let's get right into it. This is about how older Americans struggle with student loan debt. It is a news story, and because news stories, I typically want to use certain clips and not others. I've gone through it quickly, but not in detail, and it looks like I'm going to use about the first 7 of a 10-minute video. I'm trying really hard to put content out regularly for you guys, so cheers to that. All right. Here we go. I'm going to go ahead and minimize this. And the topic on this appears to be about student loans. I've not listened to it in detail, but we're going to do that now. Let's do it. Oh, let's back it up from the beginning.
Nancy Couquet works at a community college in Maryland, coordinating technical education programs. She's worked in education most of her career and loves her job. But at 65 years old, she'd imagined retiring by now.
I can't afford to retire. I could never make the payments.
Let's just pause. Got your tea? Everybody got their tea? I got my Barbie glass. All right. If adults cannot make the payments, should we be faulting the young people, their children, their grandchildren, because they can't make the payments? Something to think about.
For student loans she took out for her son Andrew about a decade ago.
So she's 65, so she took it out at 55. Now, I will be honest, I don't have children, okay? Without a pretty big shovel, I could not imagine taking out student loans at this age. Not without a shovel where I know I could pay it off, or at least I know I would have the assets to pay it off.
She pays around $500 a month on the nearly $75,000 she owes on loans she took out and others she co-signed with her son.
Oh, ouch. So she took out $75,000, and then she took out, so it looks like she took out a $75,000 Parent Plus loan, which, if you've watched this channel for all of probably 10 minutes, I don't like Parent Plus loans. I think they are predatory. Incredibly predatory. And I want to make something really clear. Predatory isn't just for parents. When I say predatory, it's not just for the parents of lower socioeconomic, okay? Educated parents can get sucked into Parent Plus loans as well, because oftentimes you're dealing with parents who are of the 70s, 80s. So like if I had a child, I'm 56, that child might be in their mid-20s by now. And I'm thinking, well, I remember when I went to school, when I was, in 1989, I graduated from the University of Oregon, worked a part-time job, had no problem. I remember my mother would just write a check. It's like, how much was tuition? A few $1,000s a year, and that was it. Okay? Literally, she would just write a check. Now, the sacrifices even back then she made to write the check, I'm sure I'm oblivious of. But either way, I worked a part-time job at Wendy's, did a student internship at the campus, pretty much took a nap most of the time. I was working in the music department, and I think they were just happy to have us show up. And we basically talked and hung out with the doctoral candidates. We're like, oh, we know we had kind of like starstruck eyes, but our job was to wash the tables, okay? But that's what I did. I didn't have to do any serious work. I didn't have to do any serious work. Tuition got paid. This was for my bachelor's degree in the 80s. So I think what's happening is some of these parents, they have an 80s mindset, but unfortunately they're taking their kids through it now, and there's a disconnect between what the parents experienced when they were in school and what their kids experienced. And even though we could say, but don't the parents know what what $75,000 is? Yes, they do. But you got to also remember, it's the excitement of getting your child through school.
By her math, she'll probably be paying on her loans alone for another 11 years.
Even if...
So 65, 75. And so she's 64, should be 74. That's 75 basically at 11 years. And that is if nothing goes wrong. That's if no payments are missed. Everything is, perfect, perfect, perfect. Tell me how often that turns out.
If I started drawing on my retirement and Social Security together, I still wouldn't have enough monthly to make those payments. It's certainly not where I hope to be at this.
how many people of all ages with student loans that are struggling, again, we're talking about the people who are struggling, how many people of all ages with student loans who are struggling are going, I didn't expect to be paying on this long, or I expected that I'd be further along in my career by now? Okay, there seems to be a common theme. And I think collectively, in my opinion, okay, I really, really think that student loan has become so predatory. It's as if what it was started as good. You know, the Parent Plus loan started as something that was good. It was meant to help people, and then I believe that it became such fast money for student loan companies to make that after a while it's kind of like what is it? Predatory credit cards. Okay, credit cards actually started as a really good tool. They really did. Okay, it was dished out very responsibly. Certain people got it. Most people could not. I think Parent Plus loans, because that's what this video is pretty much about, Parent Plus loans actually started out very responsibly. And then one day someone said, hey, you know what? We can make more money if we just give it to the masses. That's what I believe. I think student loans is nothing more than the predatory version of credit cards. Credit cards started out good, and now, you know, a lot of them people have had bad experiences with them. And all for what? Profit. For who? Large corporations.
This stage in life.
The number of Americans age 60 and older with student loan debt quadrupled between 2005 and 2015 to nearly 3 million.
Boom. And what happened in that time period between 2005 to 2015? Gee, somewhere in there, what happened is they went from monitoring, this is my theory, okay? They went from monitoring Parent Plus loans, okay? Because it says Americans 60 plus. I'm not good at data and stats, but I'm going to do my best here. Americans 60 plus with student loans, okay? Part of that is from Parent Plus loans, where the parents are taking it out for their kids. Okay, that's part of it. And during the 2005 to 2015 era, along that timeline, Parent Plus loans were basically given a nod and a wink that they could go to anybody and everybody, and limits would not be placed on it as well. So there was nobody doing a check and balance on, can these parents actually afford the loan? It simply became a parent could take out as much Parent Plus loan as they needed to get their kid through the desired college program. You can't tell me that you can go from 700,000 to 2.8 million and tell me that that's an effective program. You cannot convince me that we have this many irresponsible people. Something happened in the system. This is why I say it's a systemic problem. You can't convince me, well, between 2005 and 2015, 2 million people became less educated. This is systemic. It's built into the system.
And the average amount they owe has nearly doubled, from about $12,000 to almost $24,000.
There's a number of factors that contribute to why the number of older borrowers is increasing.
Attorney Persis Yu directs the Student Loan Borrower Assistance Project at the National Consumer Law Center in Boston.
Student loans are structured to be paid over a very long period of time. They have no statute of limitations, which means that they follow you. They can follow you till you die, literally.
And if you've watched this channel, we already know that, okay? But you need to hear it. You need to hear it from professionals. You need to hear it from the people who sell education. Okay? You need to hear it from them. I want you to think about having a child. And that child goes from newborn all the way up to age 20. And your student loan is still sticking around. That's a long time. And that's if you're lucky you're done in 20 years. That's if you're lucky you'll be done in 20 years.
And so there are a lot of borrowers who are out there who still have their own student loan debts from the 70s, from the 80s.
Holy, okay, this video was 5 years ago. Okay, yeah, this video was 5 years ago. I was born in 1967. I was adopted into the United States in 1972. My mother was listening to John Denver and Roberta Flack and Janice Ian. when I love all of them, okay? I could not imagine my mother, who did pass away a few years back, but technically, I could not imagine her still paying it. Really. Think about this. Think about how long this is. You have to ask yourself, what's keeping people from paying it off? Life is keeping people from paying it off, and it's partly because we say student loan is good debt. That's the good debt you want. Does this sound like good debt? This don't sound like good debt to me. But yet, part of what I really think drags the student loan debt payment out longer than houses, okay? We, as a society in the United States, say, but that's the good debt. I literally remember hearing student loan is good debt, okay? Here I am filing bankruptcy in my 20s because I'm a shopping addict, and yet I'm still hearing student loan is good debt. I literally remember hearing that. That's the good stuff. That's the stuff you want.
I think originally it was like $27,000.
64-year-old Annette Pillai
It was originally 27,000. I think this was back in the 70s.
of Boston is still paying about $300 a month for the loan she took out 20 years ago to pursue graduate degrees in American Studies. A loan
What is it with graduate degrees that no one can seem to pay off the bill? What is it? What is it with graduate degrees? I'll tell you what it is. Because you're taking an advance on your future pay. You are taking an advance. And unlike a bachelor's program, because most of this long-term debt is from graduate degrees, most of it, okay, not all of it. But unlike a bachelor's, let's say where someone's going in their early 20s, and if they're lucky, they can have it paid off by 50, okay? You've got people in their 40s, 50s taking out advanced degrees. Count me in, okay? You've got people in their 40s, 50s taking out these advanced degrees. And American Studies, I mean, let's be real here. Why do the liberal arts degrees get slammed so much? Why do they get slammed? Because they are not income making careers. They are not careers for the most part that somebody can say, you know what, I can take out a, what was she taking out? $20,000 20 years ago. So that's not even at the price tag college is at today. So 20 years ago, even at the price tag then, she still can't pay it off. And this is why, in part, as soon as, she said, it's American Studies, American type literature degree, American history. It's kind of late, all right, so bear with me. But what is it about these degrees? They don't pay enough. They just don't pay enough. If you took your savings account, let's say she had a $20,000 savings account, just hypothetical, okay? Imagine with me. And she took that entire $20,000 savings account, technically speaking, and she puts it all onto her student loan. And her thought is, I'm going to pay back that $20,000 savings account for this American Studies graduate degree she wants. Okay? She goes, I'm going to be able to pay that back. Guess what? She wouldn't be able to pay back her own savings account. And her savings account wouldn't even have interest. Chances are she would have a very difficult time even paying back her savings account, getting herself back to to where she was before. So now you tag on interest that people are having to pay on it. No wonder no one can pay off these graduate degrees. Something to think about.
she expects to be paying for another 10 years. She worked for nonprofits serving children and the elderly, but her income never reached the level she'd hoped.
And that's part of the problem. So one, she worked for a nonprofit, and of course this was before the PSLF, Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, came out in 2007, 2008, right around there is when it rolled out. We take out loans based on hope. We hope we can pay it back. We shouldn't be doing it that way. We shouldn't be doing do it that way. I don't buy a car, although I've had an auto repossession before. I'm telling you guys, my sordid history, the stories I could tell you. Some of them will be between me and the good Lord above, but man, the stories I could tell you, okay? I had a auto repossession, and what was the problem? I couldn't pay back the car. I couldn't afford to pay back the car note. So they had to take my car. Here is the thing. We are buying things based on hope. I had actually assumed at the time that I had taken out a car that was nicer than my parents, and I was really stupid at the time. Okay. That was also in my 20s. God, my 20s, I'm so glad I'm not living those days. But what wound up happening was I took out the loan just going, well, I'll eventually make enough. Well, it never came to fruition. I couldn't support the car. People are going to graduate school saying, well, if I take out this debt and get this, I won't say it, but I'll whisper it, liberal arts degree, okay, I hope to make enough. If there's one thing that I have learned, you cannot take out debt based on hope. You've got to take it out based on facts and figures. And sometimes we have to swallow our pride a little bit and go, hey, you know what? I work for a nonprofit. It doesn't pay a lot. Really, what are the odds that you're going to be able to take out a $20,000 loan? Again, this is 20 years ago. Okay, so today I'd probably be like taking out an $80,000 loan. Okay. I don't know mathematically for sure, but I would easily make it 3 times the cost, or at least 60,000. People are taking out debt based on hope. Should we buy houses based on hope? Well, I'm going to buy this house and I just hope I'll be able to keep it. I was stupid. I did buy a car in my 20s, late 20s, and I just kind of assumed I'd make enough money. Dumb me, okay? Should I go back to school and take out a graduate degree and hope I can pay the bill? This is what happens when we take out debt based on hope versus actual mathematics. And you wonder why the STEM people are always, rolling their eyes at the liberal arts folks. Don't forget I have a liberal arts degree too.
I'm making now what I made in the 80s. I'm making about $42,000 a year.
So when you went back to grad school,
She makes now 5 years ago. Okay, so like in 2019. Yeah, 2019. She makes now what she made in the 80s. Has her income gone up? Nope. But what has gone up? Her student loan bill. Why? Based on interest. Can she ever get ahead? No.
soon you'd be making a lot more money than that.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, if I was making that money with a bachelor's degree in the 80s, I assumed that, with a master's, I'd do a little bit better.
Folks,
Never, ever, ever assume. Do not make a budget based on assumption. Do not make a budget based on assumption. Don't buy a car based on assumption. Even when you get a new job, okay, and people will go, I'm going to start at this pay, and then I hope to get up to that pay. I've learned in all my years, I make my budget based on what I have right now, based on what I make today. And if I look down the road, at anything, I go, okay, what happens if my budget goes down? That's what I base it on. I don't base it anymore on, okay, well, I should be making more. Nope. When I bought this condo, I literally purchased half of what I could afford. Why? Because I learned my lesson. I didn't go, well, okay, if I pay a certain amount for a residence now, I hope to make more in the future, so I'm going to go ahead and overbuy a place. I didn't do that. I said to myself instead, after years of financial turmoil, I said to myself, okay, this is in 2020 when I bought this condo, and I picked the colors and paint and everything else, okay? I didn't paint it, but I picked it. And I literally said to myself, okay, this is what I'm making right now. What happens if my budget cuts in half? How much can I afford? Ka-ching! That was how I budgeted. And as a result, I was able to pay off the condo in 3 years versus the 15-year mortgage I had taken out. And of course, I will admit, I had a little bit of assistance from my late mom, but not enough that I could just, wash my hands of the whole thing, be irresponsible, and buy whatever I wanted. Okay, I still had to be very, very frugal. But I could have bought a $200,000, maybe even a $225,000 place, 3 years ago, and hoped that, maybe I'll get an increase or two from work. Don't base, just my suggestion, don't base your future budget based on what you think you're going to make More, base your future budget on what happens if there's an income loss in the household. And it doesn't matter if that's a joint household with a married couple or if it's a household with just you as one. So I literally said, okay, Carrie, what happens if your budget cuts in half? Well, I'm a household of one. Guess what? That means if my budget cuts in half, then that is all I have to actually purchase a place with. And lo and behold, people, it worked. Whereas with the master's degree, I just basically said to myself, hey, you know what? I'll make more money in the future. Didn't work out that way.
With student loan debt typically save less than folks without student loan debt.
That's pretty logical. People with student loan debt save less than people without student loan debt. Okay? Pretty logical, common sense, and definitely true.
And then once they're in retirement, if they are repaying loans, certainly that is a liability that they wouldn't otherwise have to pay for when they're on a fixed and limited income.
Let's remember this. Debt itself is a liability. I like her choice of words. Debt is a liability. Too much car, liability. Too much house, liability. Too many, Grub hubs and all of that stuff, liability. Too much credit card debt, liability. Debt is a liability. Okay? The difference is student loan liability, you can't ever get rid of it, and it just keeps going up and up and up. Debt is a liability. And by the way, that was one of the things that had me buy such a small place. Okay? Because of my financial history, I was like, I wasn't going to lose this one. I was not going to lose this place. Okay? I'm happy to sell it down the road. That I don't have a problem with. Okay? Selling it is fine. But it needs to be sold on my terms, not on somebody else's terms. Okay, so I wanted to make sure that I would absolutely be able to hold on to this place no matter what. Kind of like, for all that sordid financial past, I wanted to do at least one thing right. And so far with this condo, I have.
Because of her debt and the high cost of living in Boston, Pillai says she has little retirement savings. She recently retired but can't afford to keep living in Boston, so she moved to New Mexico, where it's cheaper to live.
I've seen documentaries, or news stories about, people moving to New Mexico and stuff. Imagine working your entire life, raising your family, doing the whole shebang, okay? And you can't even afford to retire in the country that you've paid taxes in all these years. You can't afford to retire in the country where, you were born, raised, lived, assuming you were born here, okay? But you can't afford. You can't afford it. You could afford to live here long enough as you paid your taxes, but then as soon as you were done paying 40, 50 years of taxes, you can't even afford to live here, so you have to, head south. Something to think about. I'm sure New Mexico is I think she said Mexico. I can't remember if she said Mexico or New Mexico, but I'm assuming it's Mexico. I'm going to back that up. Hold on.
Says she has little retirement savings. She recently retired but can't afford to keep living in Boston, so she moved to New Mexico.
Okay, yeah, New Mexico, excuse me. I thought initially I thought it was Mexico. Yeah, New Mexico. Most people that I know of, unless you're just dying to move someplace else, on retirement, they kind of want to stay in their same stomping grounds. And if you do move, it should be by choice, not because you've worked all those years and you can't afford to stay there.
Where it's cheaper to live. But even still, her expected $1,000 a month Social Security check won't cover her expenses.
Rent will be $620 plus utilities.
Rent, okay, well, right there's pretty much $1,000.
Then there's the school loan, and there goes the $1,000. So I will be doing some part-time work.
I have 2 bad knees. I have limited ability. My job must allow me to stand and sit at will. It's not even do I want to stand and sit at will. I have to stand and sit at will, or I will become totally mobile. Okay? Like if I worked at Target, I would have to have a stool so I could stand and sit. I can't be pushing stuff around all day. I don't qualify anymore to, stand and pack boxes and shelves and all stuff. I couldn't do any of that retail stuff. I couldn't do any of the restaurant stuff. I'm so thankful that, I love my career. It's my dream job, third generation, proud to do it. But man, I think about my parents and their bodies kind of broke down about 10 years before retirement. That was something else that also scared me. I'd already had my first knee surgery when I purchased my condo. Just before I purchased my condo, I had my first knee surgery, and I remember thinking, I was getting scared. I was like, what would happen if I couldn't work till I was 67? And if I get myself into a place that's too expensive, what would happen? That's how we have to start thinking, especially as we get older. And I don't want to be negative, but you got to think about those things.
How do you feel about that? I mean, is this what you pictured retirement
Well,
being?
No.
at this point, I'm not so terribly concerned because I'm still young enough to do so.
But young enough to do so. Let me tell you how fast my knees pretty much gave out. I woke up one morning with is it bronchitis? Oh, geez, I'm really back. I don't even know my medical condition. Bronchroid in the back of my knee. That's how fast. It's never been the same since. Literally, I woke up one morning and I had a water bottle in the back of my knee. That was the beginning of the end, and it's been downhill ever since. We can't assume that our bodies are going to give out slowly over time. And as people are aging stuff, it can literally be, God help us, okay? But it can literally be you wake up one day and boom, you're told you can't work anymore. You can't do it. And I think part of the deal with me with student loans, especially as people get older and stuff, is again, you're going under the assumption with all this debt that you can work till you're 70, 75. Or what was that last video? One of the last videos I did. Her loans are supposed to be paid off at 82 if she never misses a beat. And I believe she too was a drug and alcohol counselor. So I think that's probably leaning towards the nonprofit. Don't make your financial plans based on the assumption that your body is going to last till 70, 75, 80 years old. I would not make my financial plans based on that. It's great that she's able to still work and stuff, but, have you ever woken up one morning and your car just all of a sudden, gave out? Yeah.
What concerns me is when I'm in my 70s or 80s, hopefully if I get there, I may not be able to do that.
Like Pilates.
Exactly. 70s and 80s, and she's still looking at what? Her student loan debt.
27% of older Americans with student loans borrowed for their own education. But most, more than 70%, borrowed for their children's or grandchildren's education.
I think it's great if parents can help their children with their education. I think it's great. But if it requires the parent to struggle for their own retirement, then I think a hard reality check needs to kind of be made and say, can I really afford to help them? The world is not a fair place.
Like Nancy Couquet. Couquet, who's divorced, took out about $46,000 in her name and co-signed for around $34,000 more with her son Andrew.
So $40,000. Let me pause that here real quick. 46.
And co-signed for around
46, 56, 66, 76. Jeez. 81,000. Now, you know that I've talked about co-signing. I do not. Well, this is the thing. Parent to child should be the only way, and I said that the other day in a video, parent to child co-sign. Not when you've already got $46,000 in your name, and not when you're 10, 15, even 20 years away from retirement. I'm going to say 10. Anything in 10 years within retirement. And I think 15 is a stretch, but 15 can possibly be done if you have the assets. Holy cow. And I've said this before, I don't think parents should rely on their kids to pay the loan back. I just don't think they should. And part of it is, let's get real. How many kids are delving into their parents' finances? I might go up to my parents and go, hey, Mom and Dad, start telling me all your financial stuff. Kids don't do that. And really, kids have really no business doing that, okay? That's not the type of relationship parents and kids should have, all right? You're the parent, they're the kid. And it's fine, in my opinion, to take out, like I said, co-sign for your child. if you want to, but do you have the assets to pay it off without struggling? And for heaven's sakes, don't do it when you're holding almost $50,000 in your own name. Do you think there's sometimes a point where logic simply leaves the room? Logic has just kind of left.
$34,000 more with her son Andrew, who graduated from the University of South Carolina in 2008.
I entered into that now, in hindsight, without nearly enough information, and didn't know what I didn't know.
I do understand people saying they didn't know what they didn't know. I agree with that. Absolutely. Now we understand how young people get roped into this. They didn't know what they didn't know. You know, a counselor said to them, hey, go get student loan money. Everybody does it. You'll be fine when you graduate. But yeah, we didn't teach them anything about financial management. We don't teach them money management. So how are they supposed to know? They didn't know that they didn't know. And unfortunately, a lot of young people, and this is the thing I tell my students, you can use the internet for more than TikTok and Snapchat and all of that stuff, okay? Minecraft. I am always encouraging my students, use the internet for information. A simple Google search, okay? This is what I actually do. What are the bad things about Parent Plus loans? What are the negatives of Parent Plus loans? Do you know part of the reason I think at times people don't do that? They're afraid of the answer. One of the ways I've gotten myself out of debt, and it's true, I went, you know what? Let's start Googling the other side. Now, it doesn't mean you have to, do what the other side suggests, but it's information. So literally, even, I do lease a car, and I absolutely love leasing a car, okay? Absolutely love it. Have no intention to go back to owning a car. I've owned a car for years. I never liked it, all right? But what did I do before I chose to lease it? I looked up all the negative information about leasing. I mean, there is nothing you can tell me about leasing, from the disposition fee to, the wear and tear. There is nothing you can tell me about leasing a car that I did not look up. Why? Because I looked it up. I used to be a librarian. I'm not afraid to find answers. And I think what sometimes happens is people get afraid to find answers. It's kind of that, I really, really want to put my child through school, or I really, really want to go get my own master's degree, and I don't want anyone to tell me otherwise. Think about that. So I don't want to go on and look up, is it a bad idea to take out a Parent Plus loan? Simple Google searches like that can save you financially. And maybe a lot of emotion while you're at it.
About financial aid, it's vastly different from when I went to school. I didn't have.
Didn't I say that at the beginning? Did I not say that at the beginning? You've got parents. She's around the late 50s, 60s, and they're thinking back to when they were school in the 70s and 80s.
Have to borrow to go to school.
Kouquet obtained about half of the $46,000 she borrowed for her son's education through a federal loan program called Parent Plus. The number of Parent Plus borrowers has grown by 60% since 2005 to 3.5 million Americans.
You cannot tell me that 60% growth is all because parents are just stupid and don't understand. You cannot convince me that that's the reason. I am fully convinced it is built into the system to not allow parents to be fully aware, to not divulge information up front to parents. This is why I believe Parent Plus loans are predatory. You cannot tell me there's a 60% increase and every parent that did it is just, we just don't know. Again, parents don't know what they don't know. We are not upfront. Hey, why am I blaming myself? When I say we, I mean the other people. Okay? But it's not upfront. Think of credit cards. Why? Anyone who's old enough to remember about 20 years ago. Do you remember when the banks used to withdraw money, and they always took the biggest amount first under the guise of they would withdraw money from your account. Let's say you were getting close to, overdrafting a check. Oh, don't even ask me how I know. You already know the answer, okay? So I try to laugh at my background as much as I can, but I try harder to learn from it. But remember when, you were close to, overdraft, and what would the banks do? And Bank of America was famous for it. I'm sure Wells Fargo wasn't far behind, and Washington Mutual had no issues with it either. They would take the biggest amount first. Remember that? And then they would bounce all the little things, okay? And that was under, oh my goodness, we were just trying to help you out. We just wanted to clear your mortgage. And people are like, you know what, bounce the mortgage instead, because that's one check versus bouncing all these little checks at 34 bucks. Well, people started really providing backlash over it, and that's not done anymore. You have the option now to turn it off, okay? But people were bouncing checks. But that's because banks weren't giving people the option. They weren't telling people up front, hey, you know what? Do you want us to take the big mortgage payment and pay that first and then bounce the little things, or do you want us not to? You can't convince me that the 60% increase in Parent Plus borrowers, okay, you just can't convince me that this Parent Plus program was running on the up and up, and now so many of these parents are financially strapped. You just can't convince me of that. It is built into the system, as far as I'm concerned, to be predatory, and nobody will ever convince me otherwise.
The National Consumer Law Center says some families can borrow more than they can afford under Parent Plus because the program lets them borrow as much as the college says they need without verifying their income.
And the program does not tell parents, hey, you know what, we are choosing not to vet you. In other words, we are choosing not to basically pre-screen you to see if the amount you're borrowing is, what is it? To see if the amount you're borrowing can be paid back. But some parents, a lot of parents, are under the assumption, I believe, that their income and student loan amount has been vetted by the government. Now, maybe we can say, well, that's just silly thinking. Hey, you know what? You don't know what you don't know.
Point is the school or the federal government seeing if the family can afford to repay this loan.
Is anyone along the way saying, hey, if you take out this amount of money, this is what it's going to mean for you? Is anybody kind of giving a warning to families?
So, there is some very minimal counseling that is required when folks take out federal loans. The other component is a lot of these families don't have a lot of other options because education is expensive. So, a lot of families feel trapped and they feel like they have to take out this because they want to provide for their kids and they want their kids to have a better future.
And I had to go get my power cord because it's the power is starting to go out. That's the other thing. How many parents in one way or another, pardon my reach, how many parents in one way or another are guilted in some way or another to take out these loans that they can't afford? Okay? Maybe it's guilt over, societal guilt. Well, don't you love your child enough? You're not going to give them the best education?
It's exactly what Nancy Couquet wanted for her son. She says she wasn't too worried about Andrew's ability to pay off his loans once he graduated.
I kept telling him, and I thought this would be true, is this degree will give you a career that you can pay that off.
We need to stop telling people that. We need to stop telling people that this degree is going to give you a career. We have told that to generations of people, and look at where we are at in the student loan business. Millions of people. How many people were banking on $10,000, $20,000 debt relief? How many people were banking on that? We need to stop telling kids. We need to stop telling them that, hey, you know what, if you go to school, you'll be able to pay this off. If you go to school, you'll be able to make enough money. Oh, you may not make that money today, but you'll make it tomorrow. Just wait till you graduate. We need to stop selling that. We need to stop selling that.
Turns out not to be the case.
Bingo. Even in the science and the math. I don't think people can be guaranteed that they're going to make all this money. Even in the medical, people cannot be guaranteed. And this is why I believe that when people go to school, and if a college, if I were God and I could, make all the rules, when colleges tell people, especially the youth, people come out of high school, oh, you know what, get this degree, you'll have no problem making this money. I think that should be a liability. I think it should be a legal liability to tell for colleges to be able to sell to people of any age. Any age. If you go get this PhD, you'll make this money. Telling a 21-year-old, hey, you know what? If you major in music, dance, or whatever liberal arts degree you want, you'll get this money. Tell people, if you go into medical science, you know how many doctors have hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt? And are they all making it back easily? Not necessarily. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. But if you Google on the internet, just type away, doctors who can't pay back their student loans, comes right up. There's no such thing as a guarantee.
He graduated in 2008 in the depths of the Great Recession, and jobs were hard to come by.
After graduating with a degree in sports management, Andrew
Okay, a degree in sports management, is that known to be lucrative? Sports management. Not saying, it's not a passion, not saying it's not a dream, but sports management, I would imagine, now I don't know anything about the field, but I don't imagine that's necessarily lucrative.
has worked steadily, even taking on second jobs at night and on the weekends. But his earnings haven't been enough to keep up with the $400 and $500 payments on the roughly $45,000 he took out, so Nancy's been paying the loans she co-signed.
How many of you young people want to spend your weekends working 2 jobs just to pay back your student loan? And by the way, it's an amortized loan, so the interest is paid up front. You may not see a decrease in that loan till, you're halfway through the debt. How many of you young folks would like to spend, you work a full-time job, then you go to your part-time job, you give up your weekends, and you can do this for years. You can do this for years and years and years. I didn't think so. Not too many, right?
I spoke to Andrew over Google Hangout.
I did not think that it would be this hard to pay student loans. I definitely went in to school thinking that I'll get a decent paying job.
Andrew recently...
And he thought he would get a decent paying job. Why? Because somebody probably told him. His mother told him. And why did his mom tell him that? Because when she went to school, she got a decent paying job.
He landed a higher paying job and wants to help pay the loans his mom co-signed.
I don't want her to be suffering for it any longer than she has
character.
to. Just for doing a nice thing and co-signing on a loan. Would I do it all over again? No.
Okay, that's what we need to hear more often. Would you do it again? No, absolutely not. Would I go back to school to get my 2 masters again? No. I would have even gotten the 1, to be honest. I could have still been a teacher on a bachelor's degree. I would have just gone through the district for the classes. And I would tell anyone to do that. You don't need to pay for it.
I would not do it again. I would stick around. I'd stay home for a couple years and go to a community college
Yes.
near my house.
In the meantime, Nancy says the loan payments are weighing her down.
This is not where people should be in their, 10 to 15 years from retirement. This is not where they should be. Student loans weighing them down.
Governs everything I do.
Have I not said that before? Have I not said that before on this channel? Maybe even just days ago. Student loan debt will dictate everything you do. When I say everything, I mean everything. Name a part that doesn't dictate. It dictates everything. Can you afford to go out to dinner? Well, no, I have to pay my student loan. Can you even splurge on a $13 movie? I have to pay my student loan. Can you? And I'm very blessed. My parents never gave me a bad time because I didn't go home every summer. I couldn't afford it. I was trying to get out of debt. Okay, I was paying my student loan, yada yada. Okay, I was trying to get out of debt. I have, my stepmom and my dad. I just call them mom and dad, okay? But stepmom for technical terms, but I don't look at her as a stepmom. She's a full-fledged mom to me. But my parents never gave me guilt because I was trying to get out of debt. But it dictates everything. I could not afford to fly home. Debt dictates everything. Student loans just take it to a new level.
Decision I make, it all revolves around making sure that I have that money to make that payment every single month.
Nancy
And as I have said, if the payment is not high enough to get into the principal by so much as $1, you're going to see the bill go up instead of down. And this is why those of you that are on income based, even with Parent Plus loan, it's the same thing. This is why it's just so hard to get rid of it.
has consolidated and gotten slightly lower interest rates on some of the loans, but she expects she'll need to work part-time after she retires. And she's also considering moving to Montana, where the cost of living is cheaper.
And this was 5 years ago. I'm willing to bet the cost of living in Montana isn't much cheaper than anywhere else in the United States at this point. So you can move to another place, after you retire, but you never know. Just like rent, it might be raised up to the place, to match the same place that you just left, and now you're back to square one again.
My life isn't going to be the way that I'd hoped that it would be. It just simply isn't going to be.
All right, I'm going to cut it here. All right, expand the screen. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. We really, really, really need to take, as society, we need to take a look at what we are expecting these young people to get out of debt. We're expecting them to get out of debt, carrying loans that adults can't even handle. And that is something that I think needs probably congressional support. And it doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat. It just doesn't matter. How can we ask these young kids to take on, $30, $40, $50,000 worth of debt? And I'll tell you something, the public service loan forgiveness, it's just a hunch. I could be wrong. But I believe that in time, that is going to be capped. I believe that these forgiveness programs that these student loans are on, I just feel that in time, they're going to be capped. Like the $100,000 that I was able to have forgiven, it wouldn't surprise me if, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, these programs cap how much people can get forgiven. And Parent Plus loans, depending upon how it's situated and all that, they can be consolidated and they can be forgiven, but not all Parent Plus loans. Parent Plus loans get really, really technical. Even I don't know all the intricacies of the forgiveness program for Parent Plus loans. They can be forgiven, but it will not surprise me if in time even the forgiveness gets capped. Like you go to a bachelor's degree, we'll cap you for forgiveness at such a dollar amount. You get your graduate degree. We're not going to be forgiven no $200,000 or even $100,000 graduate degree anymore. One of the things that I do that I did becoming debt free, I always try to look down the road at the future. Where might things go financially that might affect me? And one of the reasons I really, really stayed on top of the public service loan forgiveness is you never know what administration is going into the White House and how that's going to be tweaked and changed. Okay, you just never know. So it won't surprise me if at some point, Congress says something like, hey, you know what, we'll continue forgiveness for Parent Plus loans, regular student loans, but at some point we're going to cap them because we're tired of forgiving them. And yet I'd look at the young people and, they're coming out of college with a mortgage already. They're coming out of college with mortgages. And they don't know that. But then if you don't know what you don't know, how do you plan, your future? So anyways, all right. Time to go. I hope you guys had a great Monday evening. I'm going to try to kind of figure out a schedule for this because I'll probably want to take a night or two off every now and then. But I hope you guys are enjoying the new format. I'm Carrie. This is Student Loan Chit-Chat. I do hope you will consider subscribing and have a great night. Cheers and happy Barbie wine glass. Bye.